Welcome to today's masterclass session. We are really excited to kick off an entirely new masterclass series dedicated to SAP Supply Chain Excellence. And we have a really outstanding speaker for you today to get this program started. We're really pleased to have the CEO of SAP Solutions at Kerber Supply Chain to inform us about best practices for implementation of SAP's supply chain logistics solutions. I'm your host. My name is Tom Goldsby, and I am the Haslam Chair of Logistics and Professor of Supply Chain Management at the Haslam College of Business at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. And I also serve as the co-editor-in-chief of the Journal of Business Logistics. As indicated, I'm joined today by Mr. Thomas Grease, the CEO of SAP Solutions at Kerber Supply Chain. In this role, Thomas oversees the deployment of software and associated consulting services to clients around the world. He has banked decades of experience in logistics IT and the consulting industry. I should also point out that Thomas is a proud graduate of the Technical University of Darmstadt, a very good school where he studied industrial and mechanical engineering. Thomas, it's great to have you with us. I'm going to turn things over to you in just a few minutes, but please allow me to cover a few items with our audience before we transition. First, why are we here? What is the purpose of this masterclass? Well, the purpose is to tackle the challenges of today's increasingly complex supply chain, bringing you best practices and innovative thinking from academics like myself, as well as industry insiders and senior leaders like Thomas. So what are we trying to accomplish? We want to provide guidance and insights in managing your supply chain as a competitive advantage. This masterclass is dedicated to SAP Supply Chain Excellence. So we'll be exploring ways in which companies can most effectively and efficiently deploy the capabilities of SAP's suite of supply chain solutions. Today's session gets at the heart of that, featuring implementation best practices. You see the entire schedule for this masterclass before you. And again, we're just getting things kicked off today. Successive sessions will occur at the same time over the next 2 weeks on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Again, US high noon Eastern time. And so note that we also have a catalog of recently completed master classes that are also available to you on demand. You may review these 4 masterclass series, each consisting of 5 30-minute action-packed sessions dedicated to contemporary topics in supply chain management and advanced technologies. So with that understanding, let's quickly go over some housekeeping items. First of all of your phone lines are muted, so don't worry about any noise that you might have in the background. Just sit back, relax, and enjoy the session. Also note that today's class will be recorded, so you'll have access to it at a later time, as well as the slides that we're going to review today. We'll send those out within 48 hours after the session. Also, we encourage you to ask questions. At any point during today's webinar, you may submit a question, and we'll be sure to address it toward the end of the session. I also want to point out that Kerber has an industry report in the handout section, and today's report is titled 5 Reasons to Choose Kerber, SAP Supply Chain Implementation. So please go out, access that free handout, and feel free to distribute it throughout your organization. So with that, let's go ahead and get into today's content. And I decided to frame not only today's session, but this entire masterclass with an outlook toward complexity. Complexity is consuming us, and it is increasing. And here I've captured what I refer to as logistics and supply chain factors, those things that are perhaps within the confines of your operations, and then a whole host of external factors that take place in the larger business environment, and collectively they're amounting to great levels, unprecedented levels of supply chain complexity. I also like to make reference to a recent Kerber supply chain report, an annual study that they conduct that looks at supply chain complexity, and the report indicates that 48% of companies indicate that they are seeing increasing levels of complexity in their supply chain. And 91% of respondents say that they feel overwhelmed by the level of complexity. And frankly, I'd like to meet the 9% that does not feel overwhelmed at this point, because in light of the challenges we face, certainly customers have always been demanding, expecting the right product at the right place in the right time. However, their expectations today are unparalleled. I often refer to our customers as diabolical. They're just so demanding, where they're seeking a greater assortment of products in less time, and looking for competitive pricing and a whole host of other supplemental services in order to not just satisfy, but perhaps delight them and keep them coming back for more. I'm going to make reference to a comment offered by a friend of mine in the next slide. The gentleman, Mr. Tom Blackstock, who is the former Vice President of Supply Chain Operations for Coca-Cola North America. And I've been sharing Mr. Blackstock's words with my students for a number of years now. He says, if you are in supply chain management today, then complexity is a cancer you have to fight. And process management then is the weapon. And I think I certainly agree with Mr. Blackstock that we need to have greater discipline in our processes. But it also occurs to me that we need to invest in our people and technology as well. And that's where we're going to transition to you, Thomas, to help illuminate how we should make investments and how SAP solutions can be helpful toward addressing today's never-ending array of challenges and growing complexity. So with that, Thomas, please take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Tom, for the nice transition to the presentation from me. I try to show you the weapon of SAP Digital Supply Chain Logistics. And when we talk about digital supply chain logistics with SAP, at the end, we are talking about 4 different modules or components of warehouse management, yard management, transportation management, and of course about logistic business network. Let me start with the right part of the slide with the logistics business network. That's the overall, it's the collaboration platform from SAP, which connects business partners, including all the topics around freight, logistic collaboration, track and tracing, of course, and real-time alerts and notification. But that's not the focus of my presentation of today. I will focus much more on the left side when it comes to warehouse management, transportation management, and yard, by the way. And SAP sees yard, by the way, as a part of the extended warehouse management solution sometimes, but also as a part of the transportation management solution. It depends on what the customer is looking for. On the next slide, we can see clearly if we want to go and run digital supply chain logistics with SAP, that there are 2 major, options to deploy the solution. You can install it or run it on a standalone solution. In SAP language, standalone means it has to run on an SAP system, of course, using the SAP infrastructure for the warehouse management or for the transportation management solution. But then you can connect it normally, of course, to an S/4HANA system, for example, the new ERP solution of SAP, but also to the classic so-called ECC Enterprise Core Component solutions of SAP. But it's also possible to connect these standalone solutions with a third-party ERP. And a couple of our customers always ask, hey, why should I do this? It could make sense if a customer is running a clear SAP strategy and says, okay, we want to go for SAP S/4HANA, for example, and we would like to start with a logistics solution. And then it could make sense to start with standalone solutions and connect this solution, for example, with a third-party ERP solution. And afterwards, then migrate to S/4HANA, for example. The other one is the so-called embedded solution. Embedded means embedded into S/4HANA, the new ERP solution of SAP. That means It runs the digital supply chain logistics solutions with transportation management, warehouse management are running on the same platform as the S/4HANA. Seamless integration to master data management and all the stuff that you need to run a warehouse management in combination with an ERP systems. By the way, for those of you who are running, for example, already the classic warehouse management solution for SAP and want to migrate or go for S/4HANA, of course, they can also use, if they are using warehouse management for, let me see, for simple or easy warehouse, they can also use this solution for the future. And SAP calls it with a new name, so-called stockroom management. And if it's an easy warehouse, then you can also run it with stockroom management and you have nothing to change. So on the next slide, we can see if you are going for SAP with EWM, for example, or TM, you have different deployment options to go. As you know, in former years, SAP was more, let me see, a monolith system, always runs on-premise solution, but that has changed within the last years. They are also deploying solutions on the cloud. You can use a completely software as a service model from SAP for using EWM and TM. And of course, there are a couple of different scenarios possible to run in combination or hybrid solutions with cloud and with on-premise solution. Of course, it depends what you are looking for. If you can run, let me see, a very standardization processes, and that means that if you can live, for example, in the warehouse with just a couple of inbound processes and a couple of outbound processes, then it could make sense to go for cloud. If you're having a lot of specialized processes in the warehouse, then it looks like that you're going more to the right side of the slide deck, more to the on-premise solution. And of course, it's on the other way, if the flexibility is very important, you're going more to the right side. If you can live with a not so flexible system with a lot of standardized processes, then you also can go for the cloud solution. And of course, what also has changed within the last years is in former times, you have to run, even if you run in cloud solution, you have to run it on SAP, so-called SAP Leonardo system. But SAP has opened their platform also for the usage of Google Cloud, for Azure, for AWS, and others that are providing cloud as a service. So what makes, for example, when we have a deeper look in the next slide to the warehouse management solution as an example of the supply chain logistics solutions, of course, if a customer is running SAP as their ERP system with a classic ECC or with S/4HANA, you can take the most of it when you're having a seamless integration about this. That means you can run a couple of processes by using an integrated solution between ECC, S/4HANA, and EWM, for example. And that makes it easy to run a couple of different processes. And of course, as SAP is making a lot of development on the S/4HANA side, but also in the warehouse transportation management side, you will have a lot of benefits also in the future. Looking a little bit down to the, let me see, if you're running an automatic warehouse, for example, to the PLC level, of course, SAP also provides a lot of advantages because they are also have seen that it could make sense to use warehouse management solution in the warehouse where we run automatic systems. And then the next slide, you can see that they had made a really good job because they are able to deploy several different options. You can run it when you look at the left side with S/4HANA in a complete SAP way. But also if you're just running the classic ERP ECC solution, you can also use EWM and EWM MFS for a complete seamless integrated solution, even if you're running an automatic warehouse. And of course, you can also run hybrid models. You can combine solution. For example, you can use EWM MFS for a newer automatic system. And if you're running, let me see, some older versions on material flow, you can also integrate it into the EWM solution. And of course, SAP provides let me say, a so-called level interface between WMS and MFS layer. There's also a couple of standardized integration scenario possible, and you do not have to do, let me see, a lot of optimization or extra development. There are a lot of standardized deployments available, so that you can also adapt or connect EWM with external older MFS solutions. On the next slide, you can see the best practices for the pharmaceutical industry. That's just an example. The good thing is that SAP started with the digital supply chain and logistics much more in a broader way when we look, for example, at EWM. But then they decided, okay, we have to fulfill the needs in several different industries or verticals, and that's just an example for the pharmaceutical industry. And we see it, of course, for larger enterprise in that situation. For example, if a pharmaceutical industry is running a lot of different processes, is producing, is transporting solutions, is doing the warehouse and making the distribution to the wholesale or to pharmacies or drugstores and all the stuff, and therefore SAP has a complete, let me see, best practice solution available, so that you can use for all the different supply chain elements in your supply chain and the SAP solution of EWM, TM, YL, and of course of the logistics business network. And just to give you a better impression about that, on the next slide you can see it. For example, one of our customers, let's say the Galenica Group, they are having, it's one of the largest largest pharmaceutical companies in Switzerland, and they are producing a lot of pharmaceutical products. They are transporting them all to their, let me see, to the 3PLs for the pre-wholesale, but also through the distribution center for the wholesale. And afterwards, they transport it to their own pharmacies, to other pharmacies, to hospitals, and all the other stuff that are needing pharmaceutical products. And everything can be done by using the digital supply chain logistics solution of SAP. And that's a really great stuff, especially when we look at pharmaceutical industry, where we have a lot of compliance processes. And there it makes totally sense to have, let me see, the one solution approach from SAP, and that makes it very easy, even for those large companies, to run just one solution that can fit all the processes that has to be implemented. So that's from my side, quick and do you have any questions so far?
Well, thank you very much, Thomas.